to Scott's Swinging Sports Today, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. We are not dead. We've been
alive.
We've been out for about a month now. Sorry I haven't been posting the last month or so. There's just nothing been going on lately with the world of sports. But we'll get back into the group, right into the swing of things once again on the road to football season. And it's time to do our top 5 teams that we think are going to make the playoffs that did not make it last year, and the 5 teams that we think are going to miss the playoffs from last year. So let's get into that right now. I will start my list here. The 5 teams I do not expect to make the playoffs this year that made it last year. One of them will be the Philadelphia Eagles. I just don't know if they can keep Carson Wentz healthy. If they can keep him healthy, I feel like they can definitely make the playoffs this year. But if he gets hurt again, that team could have a rough year if Carson Wentz goes down once again. The second team I do not have making the playoffs this year is the Houston Texans. I just don't know if they can get out of a surprisingly good AFC South this year. That division's gotten better and better every single year. Deshaun Watson's still going to be good. That team's still going to be good. I just don't know if they're good enough this year to beat a very good AFC South conference. Mm-hmm. The next team out, unfortunately to my buddy Joey Bergen, it is the Baltimore Ravens missing the playoffs this year. I just don't know if they can win the division again. They won it last year with the help of Baker Mayfield and the Browns in Week 17. They won the division. Don't know if that's going to happen this year, so I'm going to put them in the eliminated category. The next team out will be, unfortunately, to the Sports Fury. Josh, I'm very sorry, but your Bears will not make the playoffs again this year. They had a great year last year. I just got to see it happen one more year with Trubisky. If Trubisky plays good again like he did last year, I feel like they will definitely make the playoffs this year. I just got to see it one more time out of Trubisky if they want to make the playoffs again. And then the last team missing the playoffs will be the Seattle Seahawks. I just don't know if Russell Wilson has enough players to work with this year to make the playoffs with a pretty good Seahawks team, but I just don't know if they're good enough to make the playoffs this year.
All right, I'm going to do my 5 that are out. And Scott and I decided to do this because over the last 5 seasons, I think at least 4 of those 5 seasons, there's been at least 5 teams that have missed the playoffs and 5 new teams that have made the playoffs. So my first team is going to be a little bit of a surprise, but that is the Los Angeles Chargers. I feel like Phillip Rivers at some point is going to hit his top level. I think last year was it. I think it's an aging team around Rivers, and I think they're going to take a step back this season and not make the playoffs. My second team is, I agree with Scott, the Seattle Seahawks. I think Wilson's an excellent quarterback. I think they've lost a lot of good players around him. Their defenses continue to get weaker and weaker over these years. Number 3, I've got the Dallas Cowboys. They barely made it in last year. I don't think the Cowboys are going to be as good this year. They can take a step back. And I actually have the Eagles winning that division. I also do not believe that the Indianapolis Colts can repeat what they did last year. They went from like a 4-win team to a 10-win team. I don't think they can sustain that another year. And my last team, I agree with Scott on this one, I think the Baltimore Ravens are going to miss the playoffs, mainly because they're going to be in a much improved division.
And the 5 teams that I expect to make the playoffs that did not make it last year, I think jolly old St. Nick and the Jacksonville Jaguars will get into the playoffs this year. Nick Foles is a much better quarterback than what they had last year with Blake Bortles. They get Leonard Fournette back. He should be 100% ready to go. That was the big problem the Jaguars had last year. They did not have a running game for much of the year last year. So I'm going to put the Jaguars into the playoffs this year. I feel like they will be a very tough team to beat in the AFC South this year. Team number 2 will be Baker Mayfield and the Browns. A lot of people have been talking about this team all year, and I definitely think this team is going to be a very good team this year. The addition of Odell Beckham is going to be the big thing, I think, for the Browns this year. I'd like the Browns to win the AFC North this year and make it into the playoffs. The number 3 team, a little bit of a homer pick here, but I do think Bruce Arians is going to bring this team back to what it was, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will find a way into the playoffs this year. And I think that's not a very big surprise. But I think if Jameis Winston comes out and plays the way I know he can, which I've seen him do a couple times in the seasons past, if he plays like he did in 2016, I feel like this team will definitely make the playoffs this year. But if he struggles, we are in big trouble coming out of the season. My number 4 team is the Atlanta Falcons. I expect them to make the playoffs this year. 3 teams from the NFC South from me are getting into the playoffs this year. I just expect the Falcons to be much better this year with a new head coach. Dan Quinn's a great coach. They have a new offensive coordinator this year in Dirk Cutter, who I think will do very well for the Atlanta Falcons. And then the final team going into the playoffs, I believe in Aaron Rodgers this year. I think the Green Bay Packers will make it back into the playoffs this year. Aaron Rodgers was hurt most of the year last year. Couldn't quite get over the injury he got in week 1 last season. So if he stays healthy this year, that team will definitely make the playoffs this year, coming out of the NFC North.
All good picks. I've got some similarities, some differences. So I told you the Ravens are out. I think the team replacing the Ravens are going to be the Cleveland Browns. They are everyone's pick to improve dramatically from last season, and I agree with everybody else. I think Cleveland is going to be much, much better. I think taking the Colts' place in the wild card spot is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they will also be much improved with Nick Foles and also having Fournette back. I think that offense is going to be much better. Their defense will also improve when they're off the field less. Also, I think replacing the Dallas Cowboys in the wild card spot is going to be the Minnesota Vikings. 2 years ago, they were an awful good team. Last year, they took a step back. I think they're going to get back to where they were 2 years ago. Replacing the Seattle Seahawks, I've got the Atlanta Falcons. I agree with Scott here. I think the Falcons underachieved last year. I think they're a lot better than the record indicated, and that they will make it back in the playoffs. And for my man Terry Jewell, I am going to pick the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were 9-6-1 last year. Very, very close. I know they've lost 2 very talented players, but the Steelers always seem to be sniffing right around the playoffs, and I think they're going to be the replacement for the Los Angeles Chargers. So that is my 5.
And now into the college football picks. Here's our top 10 for the preseason. Coming into the season, I'm feeling pretty good about the college football season. It should be a great season for most teams in college football this year. So starting off with me, I have the number 1 team in the country will be Clemson. I feel like Trevor Lawrence is back. It was a tough choice for me between Alabama and Clemson, but I'll give the slight edge to Dabo and Clemson. I feel like Trevor Lawrence is going to do well this year. Should be no problems in the ACC this year for him. The ACC is not a great conference. They're a very top-heavy conference this year, so I'll take Clemson at 1. Alabama's my number 2. I feel like Tua's going to come back and play well. He needs to impress this year if he wants to show people why he should be the number 1 pick in next year's draft. And I feel like he will definitely do that this season. I think Tua will come in and impress. Number 3, I have Uncle Lou's Georgia Bulldogs. I feel like Georgia's going to be much better this year. They were good last year. I feel like they're going to get some good wins this year. Jake Fromm didn't impress me last year at Georgia, but I think he's going to bounce back this year and get it done for the Dogs. And I think they could potentially make the college football playoff this year for me. Number 4, I have Michigan. I feel like Jim Harbaugh's got another good team this year. Got the same quarterback he did last year, so we'll see if the second year under the Harbaugh-led offense will be enough to get Michigan finally into the college football playoff this season. I really like Michigan's offense. Their defense could be good this year. I'll take Michigan at 4. Number 5, a lot of people don't really like this one, but I have Oklahoma at number 5. Oklahoma looked pretty good last season with Kyler Murray. This year they got a pretty good quarterback in Jalen Hurts, who I feel like will do very well for him. Another smaller quarterback who was under Nick Saban last year at Alabama, so I wouldn't be shocked to see him play very well this year at Oklahoma. Number 6 will be Ohio State for me. I just don't know about their quarterback position right now at Ohio State because I don't really know who's going to start for them this year. They're without Urban Meyer, so that could move them down a couple pegs this year, but I'll put Ohio State at 6. Number 7, I have LSU. It was tough between the 2 SEC teams at 7 and 8, but I'll put Joe Burrow in a better offense at LSU in there at number 7. I feel like LSU's offense will be good this year. Defensively, we'll see what happens for the Cookie Monster this year at LSU up there at number 7. Number 8, I have Dan Mullen and Florida. I feel like Florida's going to be much better this year. The quarterback position is the only problem that we have right now. We don't know who our quarterback's going to be. If Felipe Franks is still here, he's definitely our quarterback from week 1 against Miami.
Joker!
At the Citrus Bowl here in Orlando. So should be a great game there at number 8. Number 9, I have Notre Dame. I feel like the Irish are going to fall a little bit farther this year I was tempted to put another team there, but I'm going to put them in number 9. I think Brandon Wimbush's Ian Buck, my bad, will be looking very good this year. Thank you, Notre Dame, for Brandon Wimbush. We'll use him very sparingly this year, and we'll see if we want to use him as our starting quarterback here at UCF this year. But we'll see who wins the battle between him and Darryl Mack and this young rookie out of the great city of Hawaii in can't really remember his name. The guy who we got from Hawaii last year. Whatever his name is, you'll know it by the end of the year. And then number 10, I have Texas A&M. I think Jimbo Fisher's going to have a good season. I'll split between Texas A&M and Texas, but I'll put Jimbo Fisher ahead of Texas this year. I just don't know if Texas's defense is going to be good enough this year to get him into the playoff. But I think Jimbo Fisher's going to have a good year in the SEC. Going to look good against most of the SEC West this year. So I'll put Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M at number 10.
So my top 10 is pretty similar to Scott, but we have some differences. So my top 3 are exactly the same in exactly the same order. I've got Clemson 1, Alabama 2, Georgia 3. I think as in the last few years, there's a big separation between Clemson, Alabama, and the rest of the teams. I've got Clemson coming in at number 1 because they have most of their line coming back. Alabama's got to replace 3 offensive linemen. I think that could hurt them. At number 4, I actually have Oklahoma. I think Jalen Hurts is going to make a smooth transition there. Every quarterback that's gone to Oklahoma has been a stud. So I think Oklahoma is number 4. At number 5, I agree with Scott with Michigan being in the top 5. I think this is Harbaugh's year. Finally, Meyer's gone. Harbaugh's going to step in and get Michigan back to where they used to be. Number 6, I'm going to take LSU. Unfortunately, I've got, I think Burrows is going to really flourish this year. LSU's defense is always very good, so I've got LSU at number 6. I've got my Florida Gators at number 7. Florida's on a nice trend with Mullen. He's really turned that program around, and they are going to continue to do well. Hey, would you remove that boo person? Thank you. All right. Number 8, and I would rank them higher, but they got a brutal schedule. That's Texas A&M. Yeah. They play all top 3 teams. They play Clemson, Alabama, and Georgia. They got the toughest schedule in the entire country. At number 9, I've got Texas. I think Texas is back. They are a top 10 team.
I'm at 11.
And number 10, this is a complete homer pick. I'm gonna pick, and because I don't like Ohio State, I don't like Notre Dame. I'm picking the UCF Knights at number 10.
Nice.
Homer pick. If Scott can pick Tampa Bay in the pros, I can pick UCF in college. There you go.
Nice.
And that will do it for this episode of Scott's Weekly Sports. Thank you for getting me up to 37 subscribers. I would love to be at 40 by maybe by
Next month.
The end of the month, coming up in July. I might be at 27, 37, I don't know. I think it's 27. So get me up to 30 by the end of July, and I'll be very happy. Subscribe to myself and all the other great YouTubers that are doing great stuff here on YouTube in the sports community. The Entertainer Talking Sports, welcome to the Scott's Weekly Sports family, all the way from New York. Welcome. We're very happy to have you. And say hi to all the boys over there in New York. And we will see you guys right back here next week on Scott's Weekly Sports. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. And we'll see you guys right back here next week on Scott's Weekly Sports right here on YouTube. See you later, guys.
See you guys.